Welcome to Book Banter with me, your host, Dianne Burkhart. I hope you will join me every Wednesday as we explore all things to do with, well, books. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. Today is November 15th, 2023. I am so glad you are joining me today. Have you ever wanted to get on a podcast? Do you have something that you want to promote? This guest can tell you how to do it. She has the MLG Collective and she can provide you the services you need to help you get your message out to the world as a guest on podcasts. But if you are not able to hire her personally right now, she has written a book that will help you get started on your own. But why listen to me talk about it when we can bring her on and she can tell you all about it herself? Please welcome to Book Banter with Dianne Burkhart, Michelle Glogovac. I am so excited to have this guest with me today. There are so many questions that I have to ask you, but let's start out by having you tell our audience who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Dianne. I am so excited to be here. I am Michelle Glogovac. I am the founder of the MLG Collective, which is a podcast PR agency, and the author of the upcoming book, How to Get on Podcasts. I work with authors, business owners, advocates, activists, everybody, you name it, to get them interviewed on podcasts to help promote their message, not necessarily sell. I don't like to say that we sell things because I feel that's the wrong approach when it comes to podcasts, but to educate, to inspire, to motivate listeners with their stories, the stories of their journeys, the stories behind their books for the authors, and to allow people to get to know them as a person so that ultimately they will want to go out and purchase their service, their product, their book. But the whole goal is to really change lives one voice at a time.
And that's one thing that I always try and stress with my guests is I want the audience to get to know you, the person behind the book. Because the more that they know you and they care about you, they're going to care whether or not you're doing well with your books. And they will read your books, they will share your books, they will share your posts because they care, because they like you.
Yes, I tell clients, let the audience fall in love with you. Let them become your fan. I was just having a conversation with another author before this, and I shared how growing up as a child, authors always felt to me out of reach. This was, of course, before the internet. AOL hadn't even started when I was younger, but an author was like a celebrity to me. And in today's day and age, we can now send a DM and say, hey, I read your book. Can we talk about it? And authors love it. They're no longer this untouchable person. My children have autographed copies of books. I have bookshelves of autographed copies, and we're getting to know the person who's writing these books. And it's utterly amazing to me, to see Judy Blume is out doing all kinds of interviews right now. And I grew up with her. So now to be able to talk to people who have written books that you've grown up with is absolutely incredible because we get to know that person. And it's not simply the book that we've read, it's now the person.
And you actually started out in a very different career path. You were not in publicity.
No.
You have a BA and a master's in law.
Yes.
How did you transition from something like that to being the podcast matchmaker?
Oh, it's even better. Those are what my degrees are in. My corporate career for almost 20 years was selling jet fuel to corporate flight departments. So
okay.
I had always wanted to be an attorney. I was 5 years old, and instead of a backpack, I brought my dad's briefcase to school. I was convinced that was the track I was going to go on. I only applied to colleges that had a law pre-major. So I was on the law track. And in the middle of my sophomore year, my mom said, it's probably about time you get a job. I did not have a car. And I could walk to the airport, and they had an ad running for customer service reps. It was $9.20 an hour. And this is back in like 99, 2000. So that was a lot. And I was like, yeah, sign me up. I will take the job. And it was at the corporate part of the airport. So it was where corporate jets fly in, they get their fuel, they get catering, they do rental cars, all of that stuff. So I started with that, and then I was quickly promoted to bookkeeper, even though I was not a fan of math, but I was now making $12 an hour. And they then put me on salary, gave me benefits when I graduated from college. And I was like, this is pretty awesome. I have this cool career where I'm selling jet fuel. I get rewarded the more I sell, and I'm meeting celebrities and athletes and all of these people. I'll just stay with this. I did not know I would stay with it for 18 years.
Oh, wow.
I met my husband through aviation. He's also in corporate aviation. Then we had our kids back to back. They're a year and 3 weeks apart. And I was laid off. And by then I had two tiny people under the age of 2. And I said, well, what is it that I can do that makes the world a better place for them? Because I feel like saving rich people money so they can continue flying their private jets is not really benefiting my children in some way for their future.
Yeah.
And that was 2018. I discovered that the purple button on my phone was to listen to podcasts. I had no idea. A woman from my birthing class for my first child said, oh, there's this business coach and she's just launching a podcast. You should listen. I think you might enjoy it since, you don't know what you want to do. And I started listening, and she said, we all have a purpose and a passion in life, and we got to find it. And I would post on Instagram that, yeah, I'm going to figure this one out. I don't know what it is, but I am going to figure out what my purpose is. And she ended up reaching out to me and said, you obviously like what I'm doing. Do you want to pitch me to be on podcasts? And I went, I didn't even know that was a thing. Yes, I would love to try that. I started pitching her. I got into everything that there was with podcast production. I launched my own show. I was producing other shows, but I fell in love with the pitching part. And I believe that it's because it's really relationship based. It's my relationship with a client and figuring out their story, what their unique speaking topics are, and then the relationships that I create with podcast hosts and the trust that I build on both sides. And that's why I was successful in the aviation part of my career, because that's what I was doing. It wasn't that I loved jet fuel. No,
Yeah.
I loved the people that I worked with and the relationships that I built. And so now that is what I do, is I pitch clients to be on podcasts. I help them repurpose their interviews into greater marketing content. And I absolutely love it because we're sharing stories and journeys and knowledge that listeners get to hear firsthand that I feel is making the world a better place for my kids.
And I was reading through some of the things that you are actually involved with, because you have the MLG Collective. It's not just the Podcast Matchmaker. You are also a podcaster. You're an author coach, and you have actually coached 14,000 authors through the process of launching a podcast book tour with the Nonfiction Writers Association. You are an award-winning publicist. You're a wife. You're a mother of 4, and that's not including your fur babies. My big question is, do you sleep?
I do sleep. I have a friend who is a business coach who says that I'm a very lean business person. I believe in systems and processes. So everything is written down, and I do have a team. That would be why I can hand certain things off. And in the last year, I did start saying no to volunteer things like the PTA, because I was on the board for that, and other kinds of volunteer nonprofit things. But yes, I do sleep. My husband says that I always have a book in my hand, whether I'm cooking dinner, I've got my iPad going, I'm constantly reading, whether it's for work or the podcast, that kind of a thing. But yes, I manage to sleep at least 6 to 7 hours a night.
And one of the things that you actually do coach people on is how to find the time to manage family life and entrepreneurship, because it's really easy to let one suffer for the sake of the other. I mean, speaking for myself here, I'm doing the podcast, I'm an author, I'm starting the magazine, and, I have a husband, I have stepchildren. I need to be available and present in my life as well as the business. But I'm trying to get this business started and turn it into something that's actually going to make me money instead of take my money.
Right.
And it's so hard to find how to maneuver everything so that you are present for all of it.
I believe that there's no such thing as balance. My belief is that you need to be fully present in the moment that you're in. So if in this hour, your job is to be hosting your podcast, that's where you have to be 100%, physically, emotionally, mentally. If in the next hour, your job is to go be with your stepkids, then that's where you need to be without checking the emails. Dinner time, there's no phones at our house. And luckily my younger ones they're only 7 and 8, so they don't have a phone. But my husband and I don't have phones at the dinner table. The end, we are fully present there for those moments. I volunteer in the classroom and I am fully present there for that moment. I'm not stepping out to take a call. I am here with my kids, with their classmates, that sort of a thing. And I think it's really hard, especially when you're starting out, because there's so many things to do and you are literally doing all of the things.
Yeah.
And when I started, I was doing all the things. I was working ridiculous hours. I was charging stupid pennies. Really, it came down to pennies. My husband would be like, how much money are you really making doing all this? Because you were working until 11, 12 o'clock at night and you're up at 4 a.m. doing it all over again.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was very hard at first, but it was also for me to learn everything that went into my business so that I could figure out, how do I want it to run, write out the processes for every step that I take to do things, and then ultimately being able to hand off certain things, because I knew that my time was more valuable and better spent doing other things. I also, back when they were teeny tiny people, we would go to play dates and stuff, and I'd be at the park and I would maybe have my phone in my hand and send an email. And I told one other mom, she goes, why are you working? Like, what are you doing starting a business right now when they're at home? And my answer was that every child is going to go to kindergarten when they turn 5. That's pretty much a given. And if I start this business now when they're 2 and 3 and I make it small, then I can ramp up so that by the time they're both in kindergarten, I now have a full business that can scale, and I'm not starting from ground zero. I'm not starting from scratch. I've already laid the groundwork to have a business, and now I can really take off running. And we've remained friends over the years. And she said that stuck with her. And she recognized that she needed to do the same thing. So she now has a business because she started before her last one went into kindergarten. But, to start small, to be okay with, I'm not going to make 6 figures. I'm going to make whatever it is, set a goal. That's what I did. Can you cover the mortgage? And start with that. Can you cover the grocery bill? Whatever it is, to start small and allow yourself time to scale it bigger, to make that money. And that's how you're going to find the balance, to be able to then hand things off to someone you trust, to pay them, and to focus on what you do best.
That's one thing where I think that I'm extremely lucky, because my husband is very supportive, and that's even financially supportive. He is the person who has bankrolled everything that I've been doing, because I told him, this is my vision. This is what I would like to do. And he's like, I believe you can do that. Let's make it happen. And even though I have been in this for a few years and I've been trying to figure out exactly how I want to do everything and have not made a profit yet, he's okay with that, because we had set a certain number of years for me to figure out how to do everything, because it was all a new experience. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, I am so lucky. And I know that, and I make sure he knows how much I appreciate it, because I could not be doing any of this if it wasn't for him.
Yeah, my husband's been extremely supportive, and especially now that things are getting bigger. And I used to travel all the time when I was in the corporate world, like 3 weeks out of the month, I'd be on the road. And now I've been home for a long time, but things are slowly picking up where, maybe once a quarter I'm jet setting somewhere. And even the kids are like, oh, we got to get used to this of mom being gone. My husband's like, we got this. Like, it's no big deal. You've stayed at home with them while I travel. Don't feel guilty about it. I support you. It's a big deal to have that kind of support within your own household, financially, emotionally, all of that.
Oh, yeah. I know I couldn't have done any of this if I hadn't had that. It's incredible the difference that having support can make.
Yeah.
But then also, according to something else that you talk about, you also have to learn how to say no.
Yes. That's a tough one. And I read a book a couple of years ago, more than that, called Winging It by Emma Isaacs. And she puts in it that when you go to a PTA meeting, you should sit on your hands, because otherwise you're going to raise it and you're going to volunteer it. And I'm not one who's good at saying no, because I figure if I say no, then who's going to say yes? And I know that I can just do, XYZ much quicker if I just do it myself. So I'll just do it myself. But it was last year, I had actually a pulmonary embolism and I ended up in the hospital for 5 days. And it was in that moment that I went, I need to start saying no. There are other people who can do this. And once I started saying no, I got a lot of pushback. There would people say, well, can't you just do this? What about just doing this? Well, at the same time, those are the same people who say, well, you do too much and that's what got you in the hospital. You're like, well, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. So I'm just going to say no and go with that. But, as a business owner too, saying no is really hard, especially in the beginning, because you will have potential clients. And whether this is new or, you're an established business owner, because I had someone actually just last week say this, well, you charge this amount and you do this, but would you be willing to also do this? And how about if you include this? They call it scope creep. Back in the day, I would have said yes. Oh, yes, I can just do that. Takes me 5 minutes. Yes, I'll do that too. Whereas now I go, no, that's not what I do. That's not what my business is. The answer is just no. So
yeah. And that is such a hard skill to learn. And I do say that saying no is a skill because nobody wants to do that. Everybody wants to be helpful. Everybody wants to see other people get the things that they need. And if you're able to do it, you feel like you should.
Yeah.
But you need to learn to say no.
Yes.
Because it's not always the best thing for you to say yes.
Correct. Yeah. And whether that's financially, being able to say no because they're not going to pay you more or time wise, it's a time suck that they just added on to you. But should you really be doing that? No. Yeah. Do you need to volunteer for this? No. There's plenty of other people who are not raising their hands and they're totally okay with it. So it's a learning curve because I am not one of those people who's usually okay with saying no.
Now, you are a coach for other authors, but now you are an author. How are you managing your own book tour?
I am slowly getting into it. My book comes out February 27th, 2024. So we are currently editing. I didn't realize what a process it really is as an author. So this is a great perspective now working with my author clients of saying, I get where you are right now. I understand what you're going through. It's been quite a journey because within selling the book, my agent who worked for an agency took a job as an editor somewhere else. So I lost her. And then my editor 2 weeks later was laid off. No. So I have a new team at McGraw-Hill, but they're terrific and they're great. And there's timelines that are going into everything, but it's a lot of hurry up and wait, sit around, and other people are doing things. And you're kind of like, okay, well, I hope they're doing what they're supposed to be doing because I reached my deadline.
Yeah.
So now what's going on? But yes, I'm working on a podcast book tour for myself. I'm working on pitching some articles and some location tours. I'm hoping to be in Los Angeles and Las Vegas at the very least. I love New York, so I'm going to try to get out there as well.
You talk about the difference between podcast PR and traditional PR.
Yeah.
I actually worked in advertising for years, and I'm very familiar with traditional PR. And now doing the podcast, I get the difference between the two, but I don't think most people do.
And most people don't. You're absolutely right, including publicists. The big difference is, well, there's multiple differences, but the entire pitch that is sent to a podcast host is different than you would send to a journalist. A journalist, you want less than 300 words. It needs to be very quick. It's because the whole timeline of news is a quick cycle versus podcast hosts. Most of us all have jobs outside of the podcast. We are not looking for something that is hitting the news cycle immediately. We're looking at all kinds of stories. So there's a longer time frame that goes into it. A podcast host wants to have a full pitch. They don't want a 300 word, pitch of this is my client and this is who I want to pitch to. They want to know what are the topics. They want the hyperlinks in it so that you don't have to leave a single email except for clicking it. There shouldn't be any Googling that goes into it. The follow-up time is very different. When you're emailing a journalist, it's usually within 24 to 48 hours because you want to get on, the 6 o'clock news. You want to hit the newspaper the next day versus a host. Again, they've got a job, so they're not sitting there in their inbox pining away for pitches of new guests. They want 2 or 3 weeks to think about it, to get to it, because if they're working their actual jobs, then they have other emails to get to. And so it makes yours, and I hate saying this, but it's a little less of importance than the work email. The one that is bringing them an income is going to take precedence over the pitch. So I always tell everyone, practice patience, make your follow-ups 2 or 3 weeks, make them short and polite. Don't be that pesky person. You never know if your email does go to spam. And so a polite email of, I'm checking in for the second follow-up. I always say, this is the last time I'm going to send you an email. If you have questions, let me know. And oftentimes it's on that follow-up that I'll get a response because, like I said, they meant to get to you. They might have left your email unread, but it got buried in the inbox. It might have gone to spam. And so now it's appeared in their inbox. Or they might have made note of, I want to get to this person, and yet I haven't had a moment. Yes, I am definitely interested. And then it starts the conversation. But those are the big differences, is the length of the pitch and what you're including inside of it, the follow-up, to not be so pesky. I've gotten emails where I get the follow-up in less than 24 hours. And I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, even certain emails don't get a response within 24 hours and they're super important, but I haven't gotten to them, versus a pitch for a guest. That's 24 hours is no time at all, especially as a host who wants to research, the potential guest. If they're a stranger to come on the show, you want that additional time to really look into them versus just opening an email and going, yes, I want them. Most of the times you're not going to recognize their name. You will have to do some homework on it. So that's why it's great to be patient about it and to really allow for some time for the host to get their bearings on who is this person that I'm being pitched.
And for somebody like me, where I'm interviewing all these authors, I will go find their book. Sometimes I will buy their book if they don't send me a PDF of it. I will try to read at least like a few chapters, if not at least half the book, before I decide if I want to bring them on my show. Because I only bring people on my show that I really like what they do, that I'm really behind them, that I want to see them succeed. I want to help promote them because I want to always sound excited when I'm in the interview. I want the audience to understand I actually do care about this person's book.
I'm the same way. I read every book for every author I interview or I have as a client, front to back. I read every single word. So that does take time. And, that's an investment of ourselves to be putting into these guests. So yeah, it's definitely important to not be pesky about it and just allow for some time, everybody. We only have so many hours in the day to read.
And sometimes for me, it also depends. Do I have the money to buy a book right now? Because I've got to buy this program. I've got to pay for my website. I've got, this over here that I've got to take care of. I want to read them and I want to find out about them, but I don't have the resources at the moment to do it today. I'll do it, in 2 or 3 days.
For any of the authors that are listening, I hope that they take that to heart, to be willing to send even the PDF to a host that you're pitching to, because that is a further investment. As a reminder, the host is paying for the actual podcast host to put the show out, the marketing behind it, the editing. There's a lot that goes into a podcast. And so to give a PDF of your book, I understand that's the potential sale that you aren't getting, but it's only one. Imagine all of the listeners that will be buying the book once they do hear your interview. So I definitely encourage authors to send an advanced copy. It doesn't have to be hard copy. I've seen some hosts who say, well, it has to be a physical copy. And yet that also takes more time to then put in the mail and whatnot versus, a PDF. I send all the PDFs right to my Kindle. So it's on the app and I can get it on my phone, my iPad, whatever it is. But then it allows me to instantly start reading it. And so that's a great reminder for everyone of the further investment that podcast hosts have to undertake.
And for me, I'm also very aware since I live here in Germany and most of the people that I'm talking to are in the United States, it's expensive to send a book between the United States and Germany because whenever I have
Yes.
had contests and people have won my books, my $6 book will sometimes cost $20 to mail.
Right.
So I always tell people, just send me a PDF. I've had people offer me hardcovers and autograph copies and things like that. I'm like, it's too expensive. Just send me
Right.
a PDF so that I can read it and get the information. I appreciate it. I love you for the offer. That is amazing, but it's going to cost you way more than you should have to
Yeah.
pay for that. It's like, so please just a PDF for me.
Yes. Simple and quick.
Yeah. And as far as like being prepared for a podcast, I have to tell you, your one sheet is fabulous.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It gives me all of the topics that I needed to have to be ready to do this interview with you. And I did not have to do a ton of research on my own to find this out. And you had the clickable links to your major social media in your podcast. I mean, it's fabulous.
Thank you. That is my goal. That is the goal within the pitch email and then within the media kits for myself, my clients, make everything clickable. I don't want you or any other host to have to do homework on any of us. You should be able to get everything you need in that one spot. So that is something I work with clients on. Some of them will come to me with, here's where I've been featured. And I still go and Google them and stalk them some more. And I go, well, I found that you were also featured here. And they went, oh, I forgot. So my stalking capabilities are pretty on spot just to make sure that you can get everything that you need in one spot. That's really the media kit. I encourage everyone to put on their websites, make it downloadable along with headshots and to just have it all there in regards to being prepared. That's a big part of it. And then also researching the host, what is the podcast you're going to be on? Have you listened to it? Have you looked up the host? I looked you up before. I was Googling you yesterday and looking through your magazine to make sure that I wasn't coming in cold going, oh, I don't know who this is. It also helps you in your comfort level as a guest if you've done some research ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
So I definitely encourage anyone who's pitching themselves or about to be a podcast host to do that research. You should have, if you're pitching yourself, you should have already listened to an episode or two before even sending the pitch. But then prior to showing up for the recording, you should also know who your host is and have done some research on them as well.
Do you ever coach your clients on how to be a good podcast guest or just a good interview guest?
Oh, yes. They get a whole guide on it. I have a free guide on my website, and then clients get a more comprehensive one of how to show up. Did you make sure you got enough sleep last night? And as simple as that sounds, it's often forgotten. Are you hydrated? Do you have water on your desk, but not with a clinking metal straw in a glass cup to not make the noise?
Yeah.
Did you turn your phone off? All of these things go into being a good guest. I also work with clients when we work on their topics and what they can speak on. I will point out what I find interesting as a podcast host, as a listener, as a reader. I will point out that this part of your story is really amazing and you should definitely talk about it. So if you tend to forget about that, then write it on a Post-it and stick it on your computer screen as a reminder. Don't be afraid to take that pause. Or most of the podcasts are all being edited, so you can take a moment before you answer. To not be afraid of all of these things that we often are afraid of when it comes to public speaking. Think of it as a conversation with someone you're just going to have coffee with.
Exactly.
Be open about yourself, about your knowledge. Always share as much as you can. And something I mentioned quite a bit is that when I first started my business, I heard Amy Porterfield mention when it came to free resources to share as much as you can, because people who download a freebie will say, wow, I got all of this for free. Now imagine if I paid this person, how much more I'd be getting if this is what they get for free.
Yeah.
So I always encourage people to give your tips away freely because, at the end of the day, you are a unique person. People can try to copy you, but they're not going to be able to. So don't worry about that aspect of sharing your knowledge and your tips and your know-how. Go into it as freely and as openly as you can. And remember that you're simply talking to another human being. Don't think about who's listening down the line. It's simply a conversation with another person.
Exactly. It's just a chat that other people are going to listen in on later.
Yes, they're going to eavesdrop.
One of the things that I had actually thought about doing was creating a video for TikTok, talking about what it's like for a podcast host whenever you get extreme guests. And by that, I mean, there's always two types of guests that you're always terrified to have. One is the one who has no answers, that you can say, okay, tell me about your book. And they're like, oh, it's a fiction book. Then dead air. It's like, okay. And is it horror? Is it adult? And you have to like pull the answers out of them. The other one is somebody that you ask them one question and they give you a monologue for 45 minutes. And you're trying to like, okay, I have another question,
Yes.
And I think some people, it's just, they're so nervous,
right,
that they don't know how to respond. And for the person who does the monologue, it's like, they want to make sure that all of their information gets out there and they don't trust me to ask them the questions to get those answers.
Right.
It's like, but if it's just one or the other, if I'm having to drag it out of you or you're just unloading everything that you want people to know, it doesn't make for a good show. People aren't going to be interested in listening to that. It needs to be a good, calm conversation that goes back and forth.
Yeah. And I think a big part of that also is everyone really doing their research beforehand. I've had those guests where you're like pulling teeth. Can you answer a little more? Can you put some enthusiasm in it? And then I will think back to, what is it that I read about them? What was in their book? And I'll connect something personal to them. You wrote about your father during this time. And I physically can see the change in their demeanor of, oh, yes, let me talk about that. And so I think as a host, being able to recognize, well, maybe if I change the topic a little bit, ask them this question, they might be more responsive. For the one who's doing the monologue, they obviously have not done their research. And to know that it's not a one-sided conversation, you're not giving a speech. You're simply having a conversation and there has to be a give and take and a flow to it. And that's all stuff that needs to be coached.
Yeah. Now, tell me a little bit more about your book.
It is How to Get on Podcasts. And it's got a long, big subtitle that I'm still having to memorize, if you believe it or not. I'm like, hold on, let me Google this to make sure that I have. It's so sad. It is How to Get on Podcasts, Cultivate Your Following, Strengthen Your Message, and Grow as a Thought Leader Through Podcast Guesting. And it is literally everything that you need to know to pitch yourself, to create your speaking topics, to create your media kit, what goes into a pitch, what goes into a follow-up, how to show up as a great guest, how to repurpose your interviews into greater marketing content, how to calm those nerves. And throughout the book, I relate it to a dinner party and how a host is literally a person inviting you into their home, their podcast, to have a meal, an episode, and what the preparation is for both the host and the guest as you're going to a dinner party, from the invitation to the conversation that's going to flow at dinner to how you're going to thank the host, whether it's through a thank you card the next day or a text message, and how you're going to share photos and repurpose that evening. And so I relate each step to having a dinner party and to being a good guest. And I also take you behind the scenes of what a host is going through on their end, from how they're setting up their show to launching it, to what's going into producing the show, to making sure that it goes live and everything else on their repurposing side as well. So you get a full view of what goes into not just pitching yourself, but what the other side is also doing at the same time, along with personal stories, along with examples of good pitches and bad pitches and everything in between.
Now, this is the point of our show that we like to do 5 quick questions that never turn out to be quick, but we're still doing it anyway because I refuse to give up. Are you ready?
I am.
How many fur babies do you have?
Just one. Norma Desmond Tutu.
Oh, nice. And what is this? Is it a puppy, a kitty? What is it?
It's a dog, and she will be 9 on Halloween.
Aw.
She is a complete mutt. We thought that we were getting a black lab, and she is not. She's 25 pounds, and she's done a DNA test, and she is quite literally like everything that there is.
I think mutts are best though, because we have a mutt too. We have a rescue dog from Russia. He lived on the streets in Moscow.
Wow.
And he came to us with the name Jimmy, but we changed that. So he's now Shaggy because he is. So question 2. What is your favorite genre to read when you just want a guilty pleasure to go relax?
Oh, women's fiction. I love something that'll make me cry. And it's usually at the end. I'm in the middle of reading The Last Love Letter by Emma Gray, and I'm 40% in. And I told my husband this morning, I was crying in the middle of the book. Like, what is this about?
They'll say, yes, don't they know tears should only come at the end?
Yes, but at 11 o'clock last night, I was crying. And I'm like, I'm not even halfway through.
Question 3. As a podcaster, who has been your favorite guest?
Oh, that's a tough one because I've had a lot. I don't know that I have a favorite.
How about somebody who would be the most surprising? That you learned things about them that you had no idea.
I had a former federal prison inmate on the show. He was 14 years in prison. He didn't kill anyone, but I just preface that because that's a long sentence, but that was probably the most surprising in the sense that no one expected me to have someone like that on the show, including my husband. He was like, well, why are you interviewing him? And I said, well, he's got a story. He's a human being like the rest of us. He's got a story. He's doing amazing things today. And I want to get to know him and his story and to see what is it like on these other sides that I've never been in. I don't have any family members that have been shot and killed, and I've never been to prison. So to me, it was, how can we build empathy for others? That's hearing the stories of others. And so that would probably be the most surprising, most memorable. Yes, I enjoyed it because I love hearing the stories of other people, especially ones that you wouldn't otherwise either hear or experience.
Yeah, I love that. So question 4, what is your favorite holiday movie?
Oh, we actually have a list. I'm not kidding. We have a handwritten list that we start. Usually we've realized it has to be before Thanksgiving to get to every single movie. But I would have to say one of my favorites is It Happened on Fifth Avenue. I also love Christmas in Connecticut. And of course, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
Those would be top 3, and they're all old black and white movies.
I love all of those.
I love when, and the Man Who Came to Dinner, that's been on in July. So that's always a good one too.
My favorite, it's not really a holiday movie, but just favorite old black and white movie is the Thin Man series with William Powell and Myrna Loy.
Or the martinis, because you can't watch it without one. Yes, absolutely.
I love those.
Thin Man. Yes.
So question 5, what is your favorite holiday tradition with your family?
Oh, see, when the kids were young, we started traditions as they're younger to just see it all in their eyes. I would say it is the Advent calendar, because so growing up, we had an Advent calendar, but it was one where my mom would tie like candies to it. And so each day you got a candy. We have what looks like a house. So each day is a door and you open it. And instead of putting treats, there will be occasional treats like a chocolate, a candy cane. We do experiences.
Oh,
so
nice.
It is 25 days of today we're going to see Santa, or we're going to go decorate the Christmas tree. There's something different. We'll write cards to soldiers. We do something different, and they're all experiences that we do every single year, but the kids don't know what day is it going to be. You know, do they get a new holiday book that we're going to read at bedtime? Are we having a pajama party? Are we going to go drive and look at lights? Do we get to have a hot chocolate party? It's all kinds of those things.
Oh, I love that. That is a great tradition. Now, I've also been asking people a bonus question because I'm creating a list to put in our year-end buying guide. What is your best suggestion as a gift to buy for the reader in your life or the writer in your life?
You know, last year there was bookmarks. That was a big gift in our house. The magnetic ones.
Oh, I love those.
And I loved the ones that were all Ruth Bader Ginsburg quotes.
Oh, nice.
So every female in the house got Ruth Bader Ginsburg bookmarks. So that would definitely be something that I would recommend. Trying to think what else. A good candle, something that makes you happy to have on your desk as you're typing away for the writers. And then any kind of book. Buy books. My stepdaughter will post on Pinterest. She has a board for her mom and I to go and look for presents for her. And she has a book wish list. So whenever we can, we will buy the book wish list. And then we have to talk of, did you buy her that one? No. Okay. So she doesn't get 2 copies of the same one. But I think those are great to have the physical book. An autographed one is even better if you can manage to snag your hands on one of those.
Oh, definitely. And one of the authors that I just talked to last week, his suggestion was so many authors now are doing those book boxes.
Oh, yeah. The influencer boxes.
Where they have some of their swag in there with an autographed copy of the book and they wrap it all nicely for you and ship it out to you. I thought that one was really good too.
Yeah, I'm in the preparation stages of putting mine together, but we just give those out as far as I know. If we could sell those, that would be even awesome.
We have covered all of my notes. Is there anything that we have missed that you want the listeners to know about?
I don't think so. I think that the one thing that I would want to say is that if you are going to put yourself out there for podcast interviews, is to just show up as yourself. And that's what's going to make people attracted to you as a person, as a business owner, as an author, as whoever you are. Just show up as yourself. And it's really as simple as that.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree with that. Thank you so much for being part of my podcast. You are just absolutely delightful. This has been so much fun talking to you.
Thank you so much. I've had a blast.
There you have it, my friends, my interview with Michelle Glogovac. She had so many great tips, whether you're a podcaster or you want to be a guest on a podcast, she can help you. Be sure to go check out all of her social media and contact her at the MLG Collective if you need someone to help you with your public relations and getting you on podcasts. Now, don't forget, right now, our November issue of Book Banter magazine is live and you can find it at burkhartbooks.com. And as always, you can find a link to that in the description of this podcast. We are getting ready to drop our year-end book buying guide, so if you are gearing up for the holiday gift buying season, you need to check it out as soon as it drops, and you can find it on our website as well. I'm also working furiously on the December issue with our featured author, J.B. Kaufman. If you've ever wondered about the backstory behind some of the most famous Disney movies, he's your guy. He has got so many wonderful books out right now. You really need to check him out, and we will have all of that information on his books in the December issue of Book Banter magazine. But now you know what time it is, folks. It's time for all of you to go forth and check out Burkhart Books and our magazines, and then go be very happy about it.